All right, welcome back. In this video, we are going to talk about the idea of queuing on the media player or queuing the track. So as you might recall from our section on CDJs and controllers in the equipment section, we have this button here called queue. And queue is kind of interesting because what it allows us to do is it allows us to kind of preview the track from a point in time in the track. So let me demonstrate what that means. If you take a look at the display here on the second CDJ, I actually have brought us a little bit forward into the track. So I've skipped over the introduction of the deep and dark track, and I've actually just aligned us right to the initial break of the track. So if I hit Q here, what's going to happen is the CDJ will start playing out some of the audio. But as soon as I lift my finger up from the cue, watch what happens. You'll see that we jump back to the same point that we just started. So here we go, ready? So if you noticed, as soon as I took my finger off the cue button, we sort of jumped back to this point in the track. And so this point, you might be able to see it there with a little kind of upside down arrow on my display, or if you're working with a controller, it would be in the display of your mixing software. But this is what we call a cue point. And the cue point you can think of as like an anchor in the track. We can sort of add these little anchor points so that if, for example, we are browsing through the track and we find that, hey, this is actually a nice point in the track that I might want to use to bring into the party, we can actually drop the point. We can drop a little landmark there by just pressing the Q button. Then if we press Q from that point on, we can always jump back to it. So we can always come back to that point so that we don't lose it. We can also hit play starting from that point, but then if we hit pause, we are no longer, you'll notice we are no longer back at the point that we started at. And so that is where this idea of queuing comes from, because we can actually just jump back to that point in the track. So if I hit play again, and then I press Q, we will jump back to that spot. So queuing on the media player is kind of this interesting thing because it allows you to preview a track by pressing Q, but it also allows you to set these little marker points in the track so that you can preview parts, jump back, and maybe kind of remember different parts in the track that you are. But here's the really annoying thing about just the regular Q button is that if I then load up a different track, so let's go ahead and I'm going to load up one of our other course tracks here, the piano groove, and then I come and I reload the deep and dark track, you'll see that we actually have lost our position in the track. We don't have the same break point that we were originally at. So I have to actually forward through the track. I have to refine that break point, and then I have to set another cue point so that I am ready to play from that point. Now, that can be a little bit cumbersome. If you think about it, if we could have a library of 5,000 to 10,000 to even more songs, and the kind of losing your cue point or losing those really interesting positions, it can be kind of a pain because maybe you had a really cool set where you mixed one part of a track into another part and you want to remember where that track was. Well, that's where the idea of hot cue points come into play. So regular cue points you set using the Q button are in memory. They are transient and temporary, which means that if you reload the track, they will go away and you will, have to, tough luck, you lose them. But hot cues are the ability to save the point that you are interested in the track and have that persist, kind of like saving a file on your hard drive or saving a shortcut to a program on your computer. So the way that we set hot cues through the CDJ is through coming into the performance menu and pressing one of these buttons here. And so usually hot cues are identified through a letter. In this case, we have letters A, B, C, and D. So I can actually go ahead and I'm going to set a hot cue to this position that I like. And you can maybe see that there is an A that has appeared just above here, or a little flag there. Let me see if I can pull the camera down here and we can get a closer look. Maybe that will provide a bit better. You can see kind of there's a little A that's appeared right there. So you'll also notice that this part of the CDJ has lit up and has become green. And that basically means that this is ready and I can jump back to that. just by clicking right there. Now, this is really cool because what I can do is I can actually exit out of this track. I'm gonna load up the piano groove track again. And maybe I'm doing some mixing, I'm like playing around on this track, I'm doing some stuff, I'm like, I don't really want to play this track, I kind of want to play that deep and dark track again. Well, now I can actually have the program remember that hot cue point. So if I come back to the menu here, you can see that I still have this A button available for me to play. I have this A hotkey available to play right there. So I can go ahead and I can hit that A, and I can start the track from that position. Putting the camera back there. So the big difference here between cue points set using the cue button and cue points set using the hot cue buttons is that hot cue buttons are saved so that they are remembered in future sets that we want to use them. Whereas cue points set using the cue button are what are called ephemeral or transitory or temporary because they are lost as soon as you change the track. But what's different about hot cue points versus cue points, they're very similar. But what's different is that you can sort of only set 8 hot cue points. But for the particular cueing with the cue button on a media player, you can only set 1 of those cue points at a time. So why is any of this useful for us? Well, as DJs, we might have these different parts of these tracks that we know go well together. And by setting these hot cues or these cue landmarks, we can then jump quickly in our mix and jump to these points that we always remain in time. DJing is primarily about being on time. So that's just been a little bit more about the idea of cueing and the performative element of it. There's also much deeper you can go into this. I hope you catch me in the next video where we talk a little bit more about our final subject, if I'm not mistaken, in the technical skills section. I'll see you there.